What is up, Saltcasters? Welcome back. This is the Ravena episode. We had a really interesting, intellectually stimulating, and I think also important conversation with Ravena on a lot of different subjects. We talked about everything from autism, which she is open about having, to being a female streamer, to be a woman in esports in general, and specifically what that's like in the Rocket League community. One thing that certainly came out of this interview is both Johnny and I were extremely impressed with the intelligence and thought that Ravena gave a lot of her answers, and also some really interesting stories about how she got started in Rocket League and all sorts of things. Also, the chat was really excellent. A lot of Ravena's community showed up, and it's very clear that she's got a really special community that supports her in everything that she does. So it was a really good episode. Hopefully you have some good takeaways here. I think that we can all learn a little bit about how to be better in the community as well as a result of this episode. So I'm really excited for you to watch it. Enjoy the episode. Here we go. We are now starting the podcast, Ravena. My first question to you, what are you salty about?
I am salty about inequality, I suppose.
Oh, all right. We're kicking it. We're getting right in. We're getting right into it. Okay. Yeah, say more about that.
I just think that women, the minorities, have lots of barriers to entry when it comes to like competitive gaming. And I think it's just a massive waste, given that with esports and stuff, you don't have the kind of barriers to entry in terms of people having biological differences, for example. And it feels like kind of a failure of society that still, when we have a platform for everybody to be equally represented, we're not.
Yeah,
we're gonna go into this more. By the way, chat. Don't worry that if we go off this, we'll definitely go into this. We want to talk about specifically women on Twitch and also women in esports, because I think Ravena's got a lot of interesting things to share on these topics. But wow, first of all, how about the best answer to the kind of cheesy silly question that we start off every podcast with? It's usually just like, what are you salty about? I stood in a puddle today, my sock got wet. That's like the general thing we come to expect. So yeah, that was top tier.
Yeah,
like
an actual salty
content.
grievance, a real thing to be salty about. I kind of want to say congratulations about that, but also obviously no, I don't want to say congratulations about that, because it is a sad state of affairs, I think. You know what? For as long as I can remember, the existence of like gamers with really shitty individual politics and stuff is always sort of weirded me out, because I always thought of like gamer like fringe society as being like accepting of like all sorts of people, because it was made up of all sorts of people that like probably didn't feel comfortable in normal, in normal circumstances. So it's always sort of been weird to me that this whole like group of people exist in this way. I don't know. It's really weird. It's really weird to me. It's sort of like when you see oppressed groups being really awful to other oppressed groups.
Yes.
And like
exactly.
And just like it just feels like, oh, you don't like, how do you not see that this is the very same sort of situation that's going on for you? I don't know. That was like my initial take on the gamers being shitty thing. I just don't get it. It's very weird to me overall.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Ravena, what's well, first of all, I think we need to establish, is there, I think I've asked you this in your stream and we didn't get an answer, but is there a preferred way that you would like us to say your name? Because I think you were introduced to me as Ravena, and then I heard the text to speech on your stream saying Ravena, and I had no idea what to do with that information. I thought, oh no, have I been saying your name wrong this entire Twitch Rivals, and you just didn't tell me? But yeah, do you want to fill everybody in on this? Because there's probably going to be multiple pronunciations.
I mean, when I chose a name, I didn't really think about the implications that there were multiple pronunciations. However, over time, I've just kind of decided to be accepting the fact that language is democratic, and however anybody wants to pronounce my name is perfectly fine. Doesn't bother me.
Wow. Another hot take. This is gonna be the best episode ever.
It is.
I just feel like we're gonna ask you the dumbest questions. You're gonna come with something fresh and save us. the hard carry. The hard carry already. Yeah. On that note, I'd actually ask chat if you could start calling me Smealsworth, please. Just occurred to me how good that would be of a name. One of the other questions we like to ask at the very beginning is just, like, how did you get started in Rocket League? Were there other games before Rocket League? That sort of thing. I think your sort of like your origin story, at the very least, playing the game is very interesting.
Okay, sure. So I grew up with 2 sisters. So I'm one of 3 sisters. And my mum and both of my sisters, who are both older than I am, have all been gamers. I'm not in contact with 2 of them anymore. And one of them, who I am in contact with, doesn't game as much anymore. But gaming has always been a thing, at least in my family, that has been very normalized. And my elder sister, who is, I think, 32, she was kind of the type of student that truanted a lot and kind of just got high with her friends and everything. And I, as a baby, used to watch them play games all the time. And the games that I was introduced to when I was very young were Halo, Mortal Kombat, and I think Fable. And the game I've played the most out of any game in my life is RuneScape, which I'm sure some of you know. Yes, I have like 11,000 hours.
11,000 hours in RuneScape. That's crazy.
Yeah, I started playing it in 2004.
That was the first thing I thought of when you said it, that the game you played the most. I was thinking, wait, don't you have like 6,000 hours in Rocket League or something? You played something else more than this? That's crazy. RuneScape. Chat seems to be pretty hyped about that, actually. So you've got a lot of RuneScape fans watching right now.
And I guess growing up, because my parents divorced, my dad was never not very accepting in the fact that I like to play computer games a lot. And that's something that always obviously rubbed me the wrong way. But I think I got a bit of a pass for it because I still performed well in school. Although, there's a lot of you receive a lot of backlash when you play a lot of computer games, unless you come from a very liberal family. And I do think my family is quite liberal, but time has changed, or society has changed a lot in the past, 20 years or so. And back then, it was much more frowned upon. I don't think people recognize this because a lot of it is implicit. I think a lot of people hear the terms sexism or misogyny, and they instantly think it's some conscious, explicit form. Whereas a lot of it is just implicit, which I think I like to talk a lot about because I think it's very interesting. As for how I got into Rocket League, I used to be a console gamer. I had a PlayStation 3, and I absolutely fell in love with SARP.
You were a SARP
really?
player? What? You're a SARP vet?
Right. So I came from quite a low class, kind of poor family, etc. So I didn't get to buy that many games. And there was a demo on the PlayStation Store, and I played that demo over and over again against bots. And even though it was just a demo, I think I accrued at least a few hundred hours in it. So when it became available on PlayStation Plus, which was required for connectivity, then I picked up Rocket League and started playing from there.
Wow. I'd never have guessed you.
That's amazing to find out. A podcast exclusive. That is so good. Have you talked about that anywhere else?
I've mentioned it a few times. But
not a podcast.
I don't know.
Okay.
SARP was very interesting, and I think the deterministic nature of playing against bots was very interesting to me, coupled with the interesting gameplay. By deterministic, I just mean that I'm not a competitive person. I typically don't like playing against or with other people, even though I might come surprising, given I play lots of Rocket League. But playing against bots was very refreshing because they behave in a very consistent and predictable way.
Mm-hmm.
And you had like a few challenges in the start demo, and I just used to play them over and over again and try to kind of be creative with it, I suppose. I'm not really sure how well that translated into my ability to play Rocket League. I don't think it really did very much, because they are quite different games. But that was definitely what sparked my interest in Rocket League. 100%.
What sort of challenges would they have been, these bot challenges? Is there anything like this in Rocket League?
No, they were very different. So I think if I remember correctly, there were like star ratings per challenge, and I think the more you scored, or whether you won them or how well you won them, would determine how many stars you got. And the challenges were kind of like, you had like warp ball, cube ball. You had some that had cannons that shot balls at you, and you had to like deflect them.
Oh wait, you had to like save all of the shots from cannons that were just
Yeah,
getting
no,
fired
like
at?
they were
Oh,
like
that would be
5
so
cannons
fun.
just shooting at you.
Why is
But
that not in Rocket League? That would be so good.
Yeah, that sounds like a great one.
That'd be amazing. That would be so cool to see like a record of like who can survive the longest against the cannons and just like progressively shoot shots faster and faster more often. Wow. Lethimer. Next map, right there.
Yeah.
There, like
cannon map. Did you when you came over to Rocket League, did you start playing ranked right away, or did you stray away from that and just play like with the bots for a while? Like, did you continue that thing, or did you just get right into it?
I was a massive casual main. The car I mained for ages was the Merc, back when the hitboxes weren't standardized, because it had such a huge hitbox. It was very noob friendly, I suppose. I still remember the first time that I was on console, and I queued into, who was it? I think it was Nitro Drift, and Mike Rules.
I remember that name, yeah. Well, I remember Nitro Drift. Obviously, I remember Mike Rules.
Yeah, and it was the first time I saw people aerialing in the game, and it was terrifying. I remember just being like stuck in my goal like a turtle, just terrified of the incoming shots. And you look back on those shots now, and they were just like, the most miserable, depressing shots ever.
Absolutely, yeah.
But back then, it was terrifying.
Yeah. Do you ever wish you could just go back in time and dominate? Like you could just rewind 4 years with your current Rocket League ability and be the best player, and you could be the person to discover all the mechanics publicly and just take all the praise?
I do think about that a lot, because I think competitive environments are very interesting, in that other people learn based on what they're presented with. It makes me think of what was it? What was the game? I think it was I don't think it was Doom, Quake or something. But there was a game that introduced the kind of replay system where players would speedrun certain maps, and then those replays would be uploaded. And it was very revolutionary at the time, because other players could see, oh, this person's better than me. Let me look at what they're doing, and they learn from it. And I kind of feel like if I went into Rocket League back then and I had all these mechanics, I did wave dashing, flip resets. I know there's that update which might have made flip resets a bit different. Etc. I kind of wonder where we would be now, because I think that people would have progressed a lot more quickly.
Oh,
so
for sure.
I don't think it would have been a thing that I would have absolutely slaughtered everybody for seasons and seasons. I think people would end up just getting better a lot more quickly.
I think you'd probably slaughter everybody for a good while, though. Like you would, if
Sure.
I mean, I think anyone who's like a Supersonic Legend level player, if they went back in time 4 years ago, maybe like 4.5 years ago, to like the very beginnings of RLCS, they would be the best player by miles, and they would have the best mechanics by miles, and they would destroy everyone for a long time. But yeah, like you said, the whole scene would advance faster, because these days everything can be learned. You don't need to discover anything yourself. You just go on YouTube and search a tutorial, and it all exists. But back in the day, you actually had to like run into someone in the ladder. Like I think in SARP, if you wanted to see this, you'd have to go and queue up and lose to somebody and be like, wait, what did they do? If you wanted to figure out how to do that, you can just look up a YouTube tutorial. Although I think there were still some YouTube channels. It's just so accessible these days. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I think that idea of kind of how people can dominate was shown in season 3 by Devo. Because in season 3, I think it was season 3 anyway, Devo just was on a rampage in RLCS because he was very mechanically ahead. And I think that in like RLCS and stuff, there are ways to get space. You have the kind of flake style of bringing people forward and overextending. You have more mechanical play styles of beating players by such a degree. You have a lot more space to make an X play, which can be overwhelming. And I think as time has gone by with Rocket League, we're seeing sort of diminishing returns with that play style of getting space for yourself and your team by outpacing the opponents, because I think we're not at the limit, but we're slowly approaching that limit of how fast the game can be and how fast players can be. And I think back then we were quite far away from that limit, and players like Devo
that's true.
made a massive dent in the competitive scene.
Yeah. Speediness now is just like optimizations on like movement, like really small optimizations on movement. We got wave dashing now. We've got all these other things. APMs are way up from what they used to be. So yeah, I see what you're saying there.
Sorry, go on.
No, that's gonna break the ice.
Well done. That's really good. Good habit. Well, we've got so much to talk to you about actually, because there's just so many interesting topics that you're good at speaking on. But yeah, before we get into the first of those, do you want to give a brief history on how you got into streaming? Since we covered Rocket League gaming and stuff like that, how did you start streaming? What was the story there?
Sure. So to give a bit of a kind of brief rundown, for those of you who don't know, I'm autistic. I'm very open about it, and I find it very interesting in its own right. And I used to be a top performing student in school. I used to be very academic. I was quite a precocious child, but I kind of ran into this issue that as I was growing up, I felt academically and socially sort of on par, and that I felt normal in that regard, but it seemed like everybody else around me was kind of adults, and they were so much better at doing adult things than I was, just living and managing their life, taking care of themselves. And the higher and higher I got into education, so through high school, college, then university, as more and more support structures kind of got removed beneath me, I just became kind of more and more dysfunctional. Which, when I started streaming, I was in university for the second time. The first time I dropped out, probably had one of the worst depressive periods of my life. I've also had depressive periods, but that was awful there. And the second time in uni, I was so intent on not disappointing my parents that I kind of told myself I can do this. And last time it was just a fluke. But then I arrived in uni, and all the same problems from last time started to crop up, and I realized like this is it. It's sink or swim. And I need to think of what I'm good at, what I'm passionate about, and just in an event to save face, I started streaming. I started streaming seriously, I think in February or March 2020. I've actually been streaming for 4 years. I just didn't have the confidence to like use a microphone and stuff like that because it's very alien to me. But yeah, I got into streaming because I was kind of pushed into that. I felt like I threw myself into the deep end with the hopes that I would come out okay.
That's interesting. I mean, I can relate to the struggling at further education. I know Matt can as well, actually. We were talking about this earlier. In my final year of university, I had an honors degree already, and I completely lost all motivation to finish the additional year to get a master's. So I just literally didn't do the last two assignments. I just didn't do it. So I didn't get it. It's a pointless year. So it's very relatable. And I didn't start streaming at that point because I didn't have internet, but I would have loved to. So it's I did have
the
internet.
Times before internet.
The internet was just not there. It wasn't good enough to stream. So I didn't start streaming. I would have actually loved to, but I did about a year and a half later. But I think Matt, you've got a similar kind of story as well.
Yeah, I just got really depressed and I hated the school that I went to. It was super religious. And for me at the time, like anything religious was just like, I just felt suffocated by it. So I dropped out. I'm like I went back actually to an online school and just failed all my classes and got an A in my one in-person class, and then everything else I failed. And yeah, I'm still a freshman in credits actually. Like if I went to sign up for school again at the ripe old age of 36, I would still be a freshman. But
wow.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. We're not doing that. You know what? I dropped out of school as well in 2004, and now I'm streaming. So it took me a little bit. Took me a little bit to find my way, but here we are, 17 years later, no problem. So it would seem to me that you're being quite successful in your streaming so far, at least when if you're looking at audience size and all that. So the quantitative stuff, it seems like you're doing quite well. Qualitatively, like how are you liking it? Is it feel good? Does it feel like what you should be doing? What are your thoughts there?
I really enjoy being able to share my passions with people. I really enjoy what streaming is and what it allows me to do. And well, I should probably add that I think a lot of people underestimate how difficult streaming is. And there's obviously that stigma. Lots of people think, oh, it's not a real job. This, that, and the other.
Yeah,
But
try doing it for a little bit, and they'll change their tune about that
yeah,
for sure.
something which is very interesting, I think, about streaming is that unlike an office job, when you go home, your job doesn't stay in its place. It comes with you. And you are the content when you stream. And so when you're streaming, one of the hardest things, I think, and I don't think many people are capable of doing it right off the bat, and it takes a lot of time, is recognizing that you are the content and that if you want to improve your stream, you have to change. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're changing in a superficial way or that's bad. You have to look at yourself and say, what am I doing wrong? What could I be doing better? What do I notice people complain about on my stream? And that's really hard. It seems like an easy thing to do, but that crushes your self-esteem so much. And I think there are lots of people out there who, under that sort of stress, absolutely crumble. It's really hard to work on yourself. And I think there are lots of people who, when you see just how many people out there who are like, have been streaming for a long time, have been struggling to grow and stuff like that, you realize just how much of a vicious kind of environment it is in terms of improving. Um, and so I think with streaming, I've changed a lot and developed a lot in good ways, which I'm happy for. Um, and I think that is something I just wouldn't have had from another job. I think if I went to work in like an office job or something, I just wouldn't have had that personal development. And I think, a common factor between all of us is that we all stream. And I think we can all relate to that idea that it does change you a lot. It makes you a better person. Um, and it's just the sheer amount of connections you make when streaming. Is crazy. I guess like kind of statistically, you have opportunities crop in your life based on how many people you meet.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work in customer services for 3.5 years, which was awful. And I used to meet a lot of people, obviously, but those relationships that I had with those people were very superficial. With streaming, there are so many deep, kind of fulfilled relationships you have with others that I think it's really hard to not change and to not develop a lot as a person. And so simultaneously, I think it's one of the most rewarding jobs out there, but also one of the most challenging in a unique way. And I'm really glad. I do love streaming, to answer your question. 100%, I love streaming.
What ways do you think you've improved, or like you said, what ways do you think you've changed for the better because of streaming?
So something I used to struggle with a lot was that in social environments I get very stressed, and that could make me quite irritable. There's something with autism called masking, and that's kind of where you kind of hide your traits, and you change the way you interact with people socially to accommodate social norms, so to speak. I'm a very honest person. I'm very transparent, and sometimes that transparency and honesty with regards to things that might be negative about can be overwhelmingly negative, or they can be damaging to other people's self-esteem, or they can come off in a way that it is kind of uncouth and rude to others. And I've had a lot of people in the past say that I come off negatively. I give off negative energy. And to me, it's totally normal. I don't feel negative. I'm not giving anything negative off from my perspective, but I had to take the concerns of others into account and work on that. And I have a lot. Um, I've gotten a lot better with anxiety and managing my life. I really struggle with those things, but I still struggle to kind of stream at consistent times, but it's a lot better. I feel like I've kind of turned from this amorphous blob of mess and disorganization to Play-Doh, something which is malleable, but it's not quite just.
That's progress.
Yeah, definitely.
I
Yeah,
don't think.
100%.
Well, how much do you think that is? Is that something that's a kind of a thing you challenge yourself to be personally better at, or is it because you think that that is something really important as a streamer to have a consistent schedule? There is no right answer here as far as I'm concerned. I'm just interested to know what you think.
Routine personally stresses me out. I'm not somebody who's good with routine. I like to kind of do things spontaneously. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily for me, but I do have to kind of understand that I have the responsibility of providing people with something that they hold near and dear to them. And the way I feel about my content shouldn't necessarily speak for how everybody else should feel about my content. Um, and when I was going through some hard times and my stream schedule would become very inconsistent, I did have people complaining, and not necessarily in a way that's rude um, or necessarily bashful or something. Just people kind of saying, "Oh, hey, like I look forward to your streams every day, and they really bring me up and stuff." And sometimes I can't be there because they're happening so late, and I start to feel really bad about it because for me it doesn't make a difference, right? But you forget how much of an impact you can have on other people. And I don't know if that's something I struggle with personally because of the way I handle my emotions and stuff. But it was kind of a shock to me just how much other people value my streams. 100%.
Is it still a shock? Because I don't think it. I'm not shocked that people value your stream as much as they do from what I've seen. Are you coming to terms with that?
I still think I'm a long way from fully coming to terms with it. It's always been a problem for me that I feel like I have difficulty expressing how much I care about things because I feel I care about things in a different way. That's been a really recurring problem in the relationships in my life. Just friendships. When I say relationships, I mean friendships, platonic, whatever. Everything. It's really hard for me to show kind of how much I care about something, and I feel that gets lost in translation a lot.
Yeah.
And so when I'm streaming and people donate and stuff like that, it might come off that I'm just being overly dramatic or something, but it really does shock me every single time. And I hope I never come to terms with it fully because it's really humbling. Honestly, I really love the process of coming to terms with that and then being shocked over and over again. It feels like a dream come true, really.
That's excellent. To kind of like tie some of those thoughts you're having back to like the autism stuff and Asperger's specifically, can we talk just a little bit about that? First off, like I don't think everybody knows. At least my understanding is that Asperger's is a subset of autism. There are other things outside of Asperger's within autism, but can you tell us a little bit about like Asperger's versus autism? And then I'm also sort of curious to hear how Asperger's manifests itself for you, because my other understanding as well is my mom was like an art teacher, an elementary school art teacher. And so all I know is through her, but she was just basically telling me that, it manifests itself in a lot of different ways for different people, different sets of challenges. There are probably some similarities, but I was curious about that from your perspective.
Okay, sure. So for kind of medical disorders, so just to put it out there, autism is described as a developmental disorder, or sometimes called a condition. Um, and you'll find these in what's called the DSM and the ICD. So the DSM is the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual of Mental Health Disorders, and the ICD is the International something like collection of diseases or something like that. ICD is typically used by the US, and DSM is used everywhere else. So with the UK, you'd be concerned with the DSM, but it doesn't matter. They're kind of the same at the moment. Just for clarification, based on the DSM-5, so as far as science is concerned, Asperger's, or Asperger's, whatever you want to say, and autism are the same thing. It's not a subset or anything. Basically, the kind of origins of autism was that there was some scientists working in Russia and some working in Germany or around that area. But basically, they noticed there were people in society who stuck out, but they had patterns. They were similar to each other, but they'd stick out. And Hans Asperger characterized these people as having Asperger's syndrome. And then in Russia, they characterized these people as having high-functioning autism. But now it's just classified into one condition, which is autism spectrum disorder. And there's autism spectrum disorder 1, 2, and 3. And the higher that number is, the more representative of how much dysfunction it causes you in your day-to-day life. I have ASD1. So I would be it's not right to use the term mild autism, but I would be considered to have autism that is at least in the lowest category of dysfunction. I have 2 cousins who are autistic. One is nonverbal and requires a carer, and another just requires a carer. I've had long suspicions that both my mum and my elder sister are autistic. It is genetic. So, but yeah, just put that there that Asperger's and autism now are the same thing.
Okay.
The reason I use the word Asperger's is because I think people understand it better. Because when you say autism, I think a lot of people think nonverbal, serious learning difficulties, this sort of thing, which it doesn't necessarily mean. Whereas you say to somebody, I have Asperger's syndrome, they kind of interpret it very differently. It's just a bit of a shortcut socially that I use.
I see.
And sorry, go on.
I was going to say, it's one of the first things I noticed is that you had it in your Twitch profile when I came across your stream. I don't actually remember how I first came across your stream, but I came across it and I saw it was in there, and I thought it was kind of cool that you just had it in there. I think I'm not surprised to hear you say at least like that you're level 1, because I don't think that many people, without you verbalizing that you do have it, I don't know that many people would be able to say, at least from your streaming life, that they would think that you have it.
Yeah, 100%. I get a lot of people who still argue with me and tell me I'm not, which is
well, that's really helpful.
Yes, people can be really hurtful about it, and it's quite frustrating.
Yeah.
Some of the mods of my channel, if they're here, like Penguin and Cal, will tell you that constantly getting deleted messages from people who are making passive aggressive comments about it, who are being insensitive about it. People just don't understand.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I have a mod delay in my chat, so most viewers don't see that stuff, but it does happen a lot.
Really?
Yeah, and I've had people get kind of gamer rage on me about it, and in my DMs, and shouting at me and talking down to me and stuff like that. I got informally. Sorry,
were they just using? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Were they just using it as like as just like they were like mad at you, they were raging, and so they just picked that up and they threw it at you that way? Is that what you're saying? They use it as an insult?
A lot of people have tried to twist it that I use it for attention, which is awful. But yeah, because they don't understand. It's a very misunderstood disorder, definitely. If you like, I can kind of give an analogy which can help describe kind of how what autism is, because I think a lot of people misunderstand. So to kind of cut this down, it's kind of like if you imagine that you have a baby, and a baby has lots of kind of free neurons in their mind, and over time, as you react to stimuli, those neurons in your mind kind of create clusters, which is what we experience as ideas. So when those clusters are stimulated, we learn about we experience an idea. And a baby over time might come to terms with the idea of light, and then with light, they might have size of the light, so big and small. The ideas would come from that. The color, so they might have gray or dark or light or bright colors, sorry. Um, and if you imagine that a child sees an elephant in a book or in a video alongside the word elephant, that child will then eventually, after seeing enough, will create a sort of new neuron cluster in their mind for the idea of elephant. And when they see that elephant, all of those clusters of a big and grey all come together and stimulates to reach this one cluster of elephant. And a good way to describe it is that in an holistic person's mind, so somebody who's not autistic, they will experience that in a very shortcutted way. They won't experience all of those clusters being stimulated along the way. Whereas for autistic people, their brains are not they're not so streamlined, so to speak. So we experience all those things at the same time. So basically, things happen in a very logical, ordered way. And if you imagine that there's an autistic child amongst their holistic friends at school, and those friends are telling a joke about, why did the chicken cross the road? When that autistic child hears that phrase, why did the chicken cross the road? That has to make logical sense in their mind. Otherwise, there's a kind of confusion that arises from that. And so being autistic, it's like we have to take a lot of things that are just taken for granted and don't really have logical explanations behind them and create our own logic for it. If I use the phrase by and by, for example, on the by and by is what people say. We know what that means, or most of us do, but do you really know what it means? For me, when I don't understand something, I have to learn where that comes from to be able to properly understand it, whereas other people don't. Other ways that I can describe it is that, like everybody else, is driving an automatic car, and I'm driving a manual, for example, and it's kind of like also with the way it kind of affects my ability to function. It's like being an AI-driven car at a cross section, and everybody else is driving it manually. And unless everybody else works according to rules and makes sense, I can't function properly. Whereas everybody else has that ability to kind of deviate from the norm and do whatever they want, which affects my ability to play Rocket League in lots of ways, I think, and it's interesting. I hope that helps you to understand in some way.
It did.
It's very hard.
The example, the by and by example, you know what that makes me think of? It makes me think of learning a foreign language and then hearing idioms in that foreign language, and you're like, what the fuck does that actually mean? Like, there's no logic. So you literally just have to take the time to learn exactly what they mean when they're saying it, and then there's some origin story for why they say it that way, but it doesn't make any sense, and it's from like 200 years ago or something. So that particularly, it definitely resonated with me. Do you see, like, so there's like I'm a big fan of Super Smash Bros. Melee, and there's a prominent smasher named Mewtwo King who also has autism and Asperger's. He calls it Asperger's as well, and I could see some similarities in how you were talking about your beginning in the game, or at least when you were playing like Sarp, and how he talked about playing like Smash Bros early on. I'm curious, do you see like other gamers that speak out about their autism? Does it seem like a similar sort of experience? Do you see like, similarities in the background stories there?
I wouldn't say the background stories, because I don't really know that many people who are like diagnosed with who have been diagnosed with autism. But I do see similarities in the way that people process things, definitely. Because I was kind of unofficially diagnosed by my family. They kind of had an intervention, and they were like, "Hey, we think you're autistic," because you've always been weird, basically, and went down this whole rabbit hole. But yeah, I do notice certain things in the way people process things, and I think something that's interesting to consider is the kind of phrase, everyone has anxiety or everybody's experienced anxiety, but not everyone has an anxiety disorder. Everyone's brains are different, and the phrase everybody is a little bit autistic is true. Everybody does have some autistic traits. You can have very strong autistic traits, but you're only technically autistic when it affects you to the degree that you go out and give it a name. And so for every single person, as it describes the spectrum, there are lots of people who have different ways of processing things. And sometimes I come across people who seem totally functional and normal to, uh, to the naked eye, but then the way that they look at things is quite autistic. To use the word autistic as an adjective there. For example, one thing that was very kind of noticeable for me looking back is the way I process Rocket League and how to play it, but a big part of that is coaching. Um, Autistic people, whilst they struggle to deal with things that are quite abstracted and superficial, actually can do very well in things that do require logic. Um, so lots of people naturally might struggle with coding or programming, for example. But for autistic people, that stuff comes more naturally. So it has its benefits. And with Rocket League, something that I noticed is that um, coaching was always something that was very interesting to me. Taking a game that is as granular as Rocket League and trying to make a general way of describing it was very interesting to me. Um, and being able to sit down with somebody who just views the game as kind of like bim bam, just smack the ball here, smack the ball there, and try to kind of make a formula for like, oh, this is how you should approach things because this is what happens, that's what happens, was really interesting to me. And it was kind of shocking to me that other people didn't see it in the same way. And so I think when you have people in the scene who are very interested in breaking down the game and looking at the game in different ways, they could well have autistic traits that make them interested in these things where other people don't. Um, and so sometimes I might look at somebody and think, oh, that person is quite autistic. And I don't mean that they necessarily warrant a diagnosis there, but they have traits that I do recognize. And I recognize it in myself too. And so, yeah, I don't recognize the kind of story people have, but I definitely recognize it quite often in people's personalities and the way they process things.
Oh,
you said a very interesting thing on your stream the other day that I was not aware of, but it struck me when I first found out that you were Welsh, that you didn't sound at all Welsh to me, because I had I'm from Scotland, but I had a couple of Welsh kids in my school when I was growing up. So I've seen Welsh people on TV, and I thought I had an idea of how people sound when they're from Wales, and you didn't sound Welsh at all. But you were explaining in your stream the other day why that is. I was wondering if you'd want to explain again to those who weren't there why accents are developed more differently for people with autism.
Yeah, sure. It's basically when we have people that we admire and we look up to or we relate to, we tend to pick up on their tendencies a lot more. If you're in a workplace and you spend an equal amount of time with person A and person B, if you're close friends with person A but you despise person B, you're much more likely to pick on person A's mannerisms a lot more. And autistic children growing up tend to have struggled relating with their family. And family is kind of described with unconditional love, and you love this person because they're your family and you have to feel close to them. But I can personally relate to the feeling of just not feeling attached to my family at all, which was very hard for me. Um, and so lots of autistic children don't grow up developing the accent of their peers. Um, and when I had my formal diagnosis for autism, one of the things that was brought up is, oh, you don't sound like your family members. Your dad has a completely different accent to you. Um, and something that is quite common is that you'll have like an autistic child who's in the UK who might develop an Australian or an American accent because they watch content from that area. American accent's the most common because so much of the media online is American. And so if an autistic child is watching somebody often and they have an American accent, they relate to them, they look up to them, and they pick up on their mannerisms. And so that is why my accent is very different from my parents. And it was very a conscious process for me. I kind of had to learn an accent. It didn't come naturally to me at all. Um, and I always get people in my stream saying, "Oh, you have like a weird accent. Like, what part of England are you from?" Like, I don't know where that comes from. And it's kind of like a Frankenstein accent, I suppose, if that's interesting to you.
Well, you know, you do.
So,
It does sound. I mean, it's hard to place your accent. It was very. When I heard you speak, I thought I could, figure out where you're from, because I feel like, I should be quite good at placing people based on their accent throughout the UK, because I've known a lot of people growing up who are from all over the country. But I didn't have a clue. I was like, I don't know where you're from. If I had to guess, maybe West London, but I was a stretch. And yeah, you're not. But you can stay. Can you speak Welsh, or can you say what's the town, the really long town name? You do that.
Every time we speak to somebody Welsh, you bring this up.
Can you
This
prove
is Johnny's test.
I can't say it completely, but I can say kind of mutated version of it. Llanfair pwllcwyn gogerill Llansilio, or something like that. There's a bit of that missed out, but
yeah, makes the cut. I would say. I think it's pretty good.
We can't verify otherwise. So yeah, definitely did that. So do you so you think is your accent, is fair to say it's like an amalgamation of all the different sort of like media and stuff that you would consume at that time, or did you just like choose like a specific voice actor to imitate? Because I'm pretty sure I haven't seen not 10 seconds, 30 seconds goes by in chat right now, and in your chat when people are like, her voice is so soothing. It's so amazing. Did you just
you chose this on purpose,
voice actors specifically, like cartoon voice actors or something, or is it just a mix of everything?
So when I was younger, I actually acquired quite an American accent. I spoke with lots of Americanisms. I still speak with Americanisms and swap between them. Sometimes I say data, sometimes I say data, sometimes I say anti, sometimes I say anti, and I'm really trying to figure out like formulas for why one makes more sense than the other, and it's difficult. But what comes to my mind immediately kind of bypasses that thought sometimes, and I just say different things. But then people kind of commented that it was strange, it sounded weird, so I started to learn an English accent, and I kind of took some actresses that I thought were interesting and sounded interesting, and I thought, if I were listening to this person's voice, what would I want to sound like? And so I just picked that basically.
That's so cool.
It is pretty cool.
It's so cool.
I bet a lot of people wish they could do that. They could just choose their accent.
That's super cool. I mean, I guess everybody else could do that, but are they going to go through the work to do it? But wow, that's super cool. That's really interesting.
Thank you. And something else which I think makes my voice more unique is that autism comes through problems in the same way that thoughts are kind of unfiltered. They go through everything. Everything is, and that is the same thing for sounds. So hypersensitivity is something which lots of autistic people struggle with. So you can find videos on this if you want to try and experience it for yourself, and they're fairly accurate, but it's like it sounds in the background, like like a ticking clock or something could be really distracting. And it's not that I can hear, like I have a greater hearing range. It's so like my mind can't block it out basically. And something which always bothered me was that my voice naturally has vocal fry. If you don't know what this is, it's when you speak like this and you got like kind of sound go the.
Oh, Matt will know about that living in California. That's
yeah, and
oh
it
my
sounds
God,
kind of
Johnny, don't see that.
And there's something called sensory overload, which is where something kind of there's too much sensory stimulation that ends up giving me like headaches and stuff. So if I light a candle in my house, I get a headache very quickly. And something I realized quite quickly growing up was that my own voice, kind of hearing the reverberations of my voice in my skull, gave me sensory overload. If I talk for a long period of time, I can get a headache. So I started to develop a way of speaking that kind of cut the bass out of my voice and was very soft. So in my private time as a child, I used to work a lot on speaking with a soft manner. So that's kind of why I have more of a soft way of speaking, if that's interesting.
Yeah.
But lots of people do pick up on that.
It's really interesting. And like, I don't know, I could just be seeing clues everywhere, and like, you know, I'm like tying together some crazy theory that isn't there at all. But it feels like this translates to your Rocket League play as well. Like, to take it back to Smash, there's a Japanese player who plays Smash Ultimate. Like, he was very known for just like, everybody usually is like spamming movement, trying to like throw their opponent off. He would just move into a place and he would just wait. And then his whole thing was like, oh, I'm not gonna move unless it's necessary. And this is what I see when I see you play Rocket League, where you're so deliberate and intentional with so much of your movement. There's like not really filler. And then when you do turn or you do like air roll in the air, you air roll the perfect amount and you stop. You turn the perfect amount and you stop. It feels very much like what you're describing. But I don't know if that sounds crazy to you or not. But that's what I see when I watch you play. Is that stupid? Am I a big dum-dum?
No, it's not stupid. I definitely think that. I definitely think that is a way of putting it. I do play Rocket League very differently. It's kind of hard because I feel in some situations I will notice things and read things a few steps ahead that a lot of people otherwise wouldn't. Um, but something I do really struggle with, and I think this is kind of imputed by being autistic, is that I really struggle to work on my intuition. I think Rocket League being such a fast-paced game, if you can have the confidence to work on to like go with your intuition, sometimes you just turn and you don't check if somebody's there. You just go. You just have that feeling. I really struggle with that. Um, and it's kind of like when I'm playing Rocket League, I'm playing a system, or like I'm working by a system. And when other people don't fulfill that system, it really confuses me, and I have to reevaluate my entire plan. And so sometimes you see that in a really panicked situation, when everybody's flying at the ball and terrified and freaking out, I just don't move, because to me, I'm not working on my intuition. My intuition tells me to panic, but I'm not listening to it, and I'm just waiting there. And you see sometimes in my streams, if I'm playing Worms or something, I'll put myself into a situation where I'm isolated and somebody's put me into a bad position, but I won't move. And I sometimes just get scored on without moving there because I'm still processing what I need to do, which a lot of people find very weird. And I think lots of people find it very frustrating to play with when we're in twos or in threes, because I do take my time a lot with things. And especially in threes, I like to it's kind of like a kettle. I like to build that pressure up until there's a high percentage opportunity coming through. And oftentimes I like to take shots to cause a series of outcomes to occur rather than to score. And it frustrates me a lot when people just give the ball away, possession-wise.
Can relate.
Yes.
Can relate.
Yeah, you might be Johnny's favorite player.
No. Yeah, I do play in a very different way. And lots of people say, oh, you suck at threes, or you're not very good at threes, because that's the fastest paced game mode. And there's all these kinds of problems people have with me, because I don't like to just work off intuition and just hope that the opponent will miss. I need to know that the opponent will miss. I need to make sure of it. And if I know that the opponent could possibly get there, and I also base that off my own mechanics. I think I'm quite good mechanically. And if I'm looking at a situation thinking I could get to that, I won't shoot the ball there. I don't like to take chances with that. And lots of people, I think, just play the game and they just hope that people will miss. They work based off unforced errors.
Oh, for sure.
I prefer forced errors, 100%.
The majority, that's a popular way to play. Definitely. Just like, yeah, hopefully they'll miss this. Yeah, I'm just gonna shoot this. Maybe they'll miss. Yeah, it's true.
I find that I'm kind of very disaffected towards like competitive Rocket League or pro Rocket League often, because it just feels like it's very boring in the way that everybody just bangs the ball back and forth and hopes at some point somebody misses. Whereas you can actually play in such a way that you can minimize unforced errors and maximize forced errors. I've spoken before about like I find Flakes very interesting to watch play, and I definitely feel that way. I think he kind of personifies that play style, and lots of people hate Flakes for that reason. They hate the way he plays. It doesn't make sense to them, and he's very, very good at it. And I think he kind of has that. He kind of has that ability to be very confident in what he does and sometimes work off that intuition, whilst also mastering the sort of things I'm talking about. And I've always looked at it and thought it's very interesting. And I really do wish that this was more involved in the meta of the game, but I don't think it is. I think it's kind of anti-meta, unfortunately.
Yeah, the game's definitely gone away from that recently because of well, here's one for you. I want to know your quick take on this before we go into talking about esports and competition in more detail. But what do you think about increasing the size of the Rocket League pitch, the Rocket League field for 3v3? Do you think that would make the game more what you want it to be?
I don't know. I kind of like the challenge of constraining to such a small area. It's like trying to take a chaotic system and trying to make it deterministic in some way. So, um, not necessarily. I don't think it necessarily needs that. I think that people just need to change. I do think it'd be very interesting. I think larger pitch sizes for the game would add a lot more, many more dynamics to the game and the way it's played. And I'd love to see it, but I can't say for certain whether I think it needs it.
Well,
So to
you say
speak.
there, yeah, I think you've nailed it. You know, people just need to change. But what do you think's easier to change? The entire Rocket League player base or the size of the pitch? Like, that's all I'm going to say. I do agree, though. It is possible for the game to play differently. But without going too much into these like topics that are just kind of vague, you said earlier that you don't really like or you've never really been a fan of competing, but you do compete when you play Rocket League, of course, even though you started off as a casual main. Now you've gone as far away from being a casual main as you can go. You compete in a team and you won the recent WCBC. How did all this come about for somebody who doesn't like competing to end up in this position? There must have been some steps there between these the destination and where you started.
Sure. If we're kind of going off the kind of logic is important to me and it makes sense and it frustrates me when other things don't work by logic or by the system I understand. Um, Injustice is something which really annoys me. Um, and when I see a kind of injustice in the world, so for example, when I feel that women have too many barriers to entry in competitive gaming, etc., and there's an opportunity to be a part of affirmative action, I 100% want to be a part of that, whether I personally gain from it or not. Um, and I feel that WCBC is affirmative action. If anybody in the chat doesn't know what affirmative action is, it basically means that you're taking a disadvantaged or underrepresented group and you're overrepresenting them in an attempt to normalize that, because society by normal constraints will not change fast enough to accommodate these things. And so you see a lot of kind of pushback from this, with people getting angry saying these players aren't on RLCS level, these players don't deserve prize pools and stuff like that. Just being very ignorant about the fact there's affirmative action. And I think it's very important. And so I really want to be a part of that. In terms of actually competing in the game, though, I try not to view it as like, oh, I want to be better than this person or I want to be the best. It's just rather, it feels like refining a system to me, which I'm very passionate about. I'm still a free play main. It's still my favorite thing to do. But there are some things that you get in ranked games that you simply don't have in free play. And I love to kind of refine those things.
You mentioned there the kind of response. We've actually, I think we talked about it on the podcast before, the kind of edgy EU bubble player tweets. If it wasn't a podcast, I think we talked about it while playing Super Bunnyman or something, Matt. But the yeah, the tweets that various people were putting out in response to the WCBC happening with a $5,000 prize pool, the tweets were just ridiculous. They were so far away from what the take is, or what the take should be, that we were kind of like surprised. Not so much that people thought this. Unfortunately, I'm not surprised that bubble players think these thoughts, but I was surprised to see them putting them out there, like, you know, publicly shaming themselves and their intelligence for everybody to read. But
publicly shaming themselves. Like
yeah, that's pretty much what I was looking at. I was like, wow, how could they be dumb enough? I mean, obviously people are dumb enough to think this, but dumb enough to then tweet it that's a step further. Like that's really dumb.
There's a concept in stand-up comedy called a comic's comic, and it's usually meant to be like positive, but it can also be negative as well. It's like this comedian's on stage and they're just really performing for the other comics in the back of the room. They're not performing for the crowd. They're just like, you know, telling like the in-crowd jokes or whatever. And that's kind of how I feel like these guys are doing with each other. They're like, yeah, we're not that good, so we need to say these kinds of things to try to get our attention, and people will like us if we do this. But in actuality, it has the exact opposite effect.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, what do you think about all this? I mean, you won the tournament, and you must have felt pretty proud of that achievement. You must have felt pretty happy about it, and it must be, you know, it must suck to, you know, read these kind of takes from other people in the Rocket League community, even if you know that that these tweets are completely inaccurate, completely wrong. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I kind of tweeted out recently that anybody who's against affirmative action can kiss my ass, or figuratively kiss my ass, and I was quite I was quite honest about that. I do feel that these people are not worth kind of giving their time to often, because there are some people who are honestly misunderstood, and there are lots of people who just seem very malevolent and malicious in the way that they try to frame things. And I just think one of the cool things behind this is that accomplishment is subjective. If you have a 100-year-old person and they run 100 meters, you don't say, oh, well, you know, whatever, 100 meters is easy to run, I could do that. You empathize that person and say, hey, if I was 100, it was probably a lot more difficult. So that's something we should celebrate. Well done to that person, that 100-year-old who ran 100 meters, right? But then people don't apply this same kind of thinking to women in gaming because they don't have any firsthand or rational experience or an understanding of the barriers we have to gaming. And obviously, equality is going to feel like oppression when you're used to privilege, right? 100%. And I really think that it's just something that a lot of these people have no idea exists, the whole barriers to entry thing. Something I think is a really great physical example, because lots of people kind of abstract these things into non-issues completely, is six mans. Six mans is something where you is a place where you go, you play games against people. It's like competitive, but with microphones and voice chat and stuff, and it's held in quite high regard. As a woman, you can't play in six mans. You can't. You will either get people being benevolently sexist, so flirting with you all the time and treating you weirdly, or you'll get people who look down on you and don't want to queue with you because of it. Every time I've been in six mans, I've had people stream sniping me, well, queue sniping me, sorry. They've been toxic towards me. I've had people flirting with me every single time. That is a physical example. If I wanted to say, make my mark, I'm not having fun in ranked. How do I do this? I can't get into any tournaments because people don't want to team with a woman, etc. Hey, I'll go to six mans. I can't do six mans because of all this crap, and none of it gets fixed at all. And I'm using this example again because people can't take this and say, hey, you're just talking a load of stuff, right? This is something, an actual experience that you can relate to. You play in six mans. And I'm talking about that. I'm talking about my experience there and how much it sucks to be in it. And
so do you think
can't. Sorry.
No, sorry. No, I thought. Please continue.
No, I was gonna say, and I can't. I don't have the same access to opportunity to you in six mans because of that. Because something I can't control.
So you think that I mean, it seems pretty clear that the difficulties that women have in esports, in Rocket League, for more specifically, are things that go completely over the head of the bubble players who are making life difficult in this case. But it's not just bubble players. This is just an example. Recently, I think the entire like Rocket League community, esports community, like on average, are full of people who don't understand the issues that women do face, so the issues you just described. And they think, like you mentioned earlier, since esports doesn't have the physical limitation, well, women don't have the same physical limitations in esports as they do in sports, that therefore it's a level playing field, and that there aren't there aren't any barriers of entry for women. but it couldn't really be farther from the truth. There are many barriers, and you mentioned there the barrier with six mans and not being able to play pro because of the overly judgmental and disrespectful responses that you're going to get. But there's plenty other examples of this I'm sure you could share related to streaming, which is another angle that people think there is no disadvantage for women. A lot of people think that women aren't at a disadvantage on Twitch when it comes to streaming, but actually it's a male-dominated field, and there are disadvantages there as well. I've heard you speak about this on your own stream as well. Do you want to talk to that point a little bit as well?
Yeah, sure. So, in any field where you have something that people tend to divide based on gender, sport, streaming, anything, um, as a woman, when you succeed in your field, you're only ever going to be as good as the other woman. You are always held to that. Um, so, in sports and stuff, for example, sports kind of split up in two different ways. You either have these masculinized sports like basketball, football slash soccer, baseball, and stuff. And if you're a woman who plays in one of these things, you're only ever going to be as good as the woman there. You're never going to be seen as being on par with the men. You're never going to get paid as much. You're never going to be respected as much by anybody. Then there's the other side. You have sports and stuff which is feminized. So things like gymnastics, ballet, ice skating, the stuff like that. And then you will only be as good as, the skirt you wear, so to speak. These are in these competitions, people are it's constantly glamorized and sexualized in lots of ways. And there's no escape for that. And I think a lot of like previous generations would have looked up to these people. They'd have looked up to these people in feminized sports and think, that could be me. With gaming, there's nothing feminine about being an Octane and hitting a flip reset. There's nothing feminine about smacking a rebound and absolutely clanging the ball across, right? There's nothing feminine about that. It's something masculine. It's totally abstracted. And I I just think that it's a massive shame that the people don't take this understanding into account. As a streamer, I get so much sexism levied at me. It's interesting, ever since I've kind of gotten bigger in the community, I don't receive blatant sexism as much as I used to on stream. But when I play off stream, about 1 in 3 matches, I get people either, inting, so intentionally throwing my games, forfeiting them, saying outright sexist things towards me, and every time I post this stuff on Twitter, people just say, "Stop being dramatic about it, ignore it." And in any profession, like, think of the greatest artists you know, they're all men. Think of all the greatest mathematicians you know, they're all men. Even feminine things, cooking, the greatest chefs you know, they're all men. If you think about gardeners, it's all men. It's always men at the top of these things. And in streaming, it's no different. People like to complain about how women have it easier on Twitch, but all the top streamers are men. And all the women who do stream are always constrained to being some kind of content creator that is at the mercy of other people's sexism. And I have to deal with my mods, bless them, have to deal with so many awful comments from people, some of which are malicious and some are just, very ignorant. I'm tired of being called a girl gamer and being segregated into a separate category of gamer. Gamer is gender neutral as it can be, but somehow people tend to engender it somehow. Um, and yeah, like it's true that women on Twitch do fulfill a niche of some kind. There are people who might relate more to feminine things than the masculine things in the community and want that, but you shouldn't look at female streamers and think of their success as being indicative of the fact that they're female or their gender. You should look at them and think of their success as being a woman who's made it this far against all the odds. Because
Yeah.
before you even get onto Twitch, before you even get in gaming, you have like women don't play games shoved down your throat. You have people in your social circles not being interested in the same thing. a lot of women, I'm sure, who game can relate to being in school, and just nobody's interested in the same things as you. When you look at more masculinized things like basketball and baseball, you think men. When you think of a doctor, you think man. When you think of receptionist, you think woman, right? And then when you take a man, somebody who is kind of in tune with their identity of being male, and you say, how would you feel about being a receptionist? It won't resonate with you because you think of that as being a woman's job. Even if you are socially progressive and you don't truly believe that, it's embedded in your brain.
Definitely.
You have to kind of work against it. And so when you're a woman growing up, when you look at gaming, what do you think? You don't think woman, you think man. And so growing up, you're not going to feel interested and identify with gaming at all because it's a totally male-dominated sport. Women aren't represented in it. And so even before you get into gaming and you jump through all of these hoops to even get to Twitch at all, and all the abuse and people making fun of your voice in voice chats and calling you babe and beautiful and all these horrible, weird things that kind of make you feel so disenfranchised towards it. Then when you finally get on Twitch, you finally get through those hoops and you're being successful as a streamer. You have people tell you the only reason you're successful is because you're female. And that is so, so frustrating. And it's wrong. It's really wrong. And, there are no idols in esports for women at all. We are only ever going to see ourselves on Twitch as being content creators. We're not the extra, we're not the scrub, we're not the K-dot, we're not the very peak. We're the content creators. You never have that idol who's there, who stands as, hey, I'm a pro player. Maybe in Rocket League you have Karma, which I think we're blessed with. Most top esports never have women competing in the top levels. I think it's absolutely amazing that Karma was in the RCS. I think it's amazing. It's wonderful. And like Johnny, I spoke to you. Well, sorry, not spoke to you. I heard you speak in one of your videos before about like sports psychology 101 and how your expectations and the expectation you set for yourself affect your performance. You were saying about how like when you're going to like shoot the ball in Rocket League, if you come into that shot thinking that you're going to score it, you're more likely to score it. Sports psychology 101. This is things that you get taught if you're like a professional player across major sports. And there are countless studies out there. One I can quote, for example, is that 2 groups of women have to solve a puzzle. And one of those groups is just told, do it as quickly as you can. No strings attached. The other one is told, hey, like you participate in a study, and this is a puzzle that men typically are quicker at solving because they have like a biological advantage in their brain, and you're being compared. And it's repeatable, and every single time, those women in the second group will perform worse. They will be slower. And people are trying to abstract this and say, oh, but you don't sit there and you think about, I'm not as good as men. Nobody thinks that, sure. When you're in a Rocket League game competing in RCS and you're nervous, you're not constantly sitting there thinking, I'm so nervous, I'm so nervous. You don't go up to that ball and think, I'm going to miss this ball, I'm going to miss it. You just do miss because you're nervous. It affects you unconsciously. And when you're a woman growing up and your expectations are constantly like crammed down the throat that you're not as good as men and you can't compete on the same level as men, of course you're going to perform worse. Of course, ignoring all the other barriers to entry. And so when you have women in the WCBC competing relatively at their own level, it should be celebrated. You shouldn't have these, these chuds going around and saying about, oh, they're not at the same level as men, that they're not at the same level as this or whatever.
Yeah.
It's important to us. It's really important to us.
And it's important. That's why it's important that the tournament exists. That's why it's important that people like you exist. You actually, I heard you say a really, or you told a really great story in your stream just recently. That would be awesome if you wanted to share again. It was about the dad who had contacted you to tell you about his daughter who was watching your WCBC games. Does that ring any bells?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I was like, I'm hoping I didn't make this up. Like, if I've made, I was like, okay, with this many details, there has to be like a story here.
If she said no, were you just gonna be like, all right, hold my beer?
I would be like, well,
I'm gonna make this up myself. Here we go.
So when I was competing the first season of WCBC, it was just a small tournament. I think the prize pool was like $1,000 internationally or something. Then I was in a team, and we got signed by, well, not signed by, but picked up by Upper 90 Esports, whatever. And I was on Twitter one day, and I think he DM'd me on Twitter, and he was like, "Hey, my daughter's a really big fan of you." I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he's like, "My daughter watches your games every week. She's such a big fan of you." And it hit me then. I was like, "What?" And he spoke about how she idolizes me and she looks up to me and she really wants to be like me when she's older. And she's only like a 6-year-old girl or something, bless her. She's not acquainted to the wide world and all the sexism bullshit that we have to deal with. She just enjoying the game, and she could be watching RLCS, and she could look at KDOP and want to be one of the best shooters in EU. She could look at some of the mechanical player like Astral and how he's destroying the viewers' mechanics. But no, she looked at me, and the reason she looked at me is because I'm female, and she relates to that. She grows up, and she feels connected to me in some way. And I was like, that's amazing. And it really warmed my heart completely that this girl had idolized me in that way. And I arranged with her dad, and I was like, hey, I'll get you on my stream. We can play together. We can play some games together. And it was really janky, right? Because they'd never used Discord in their life. The mic was peaking constantly. It was probably one of the worst audio experiences ever. But it was amazing to just kind of have that connection with somebody who looked up to me. And you might think, oh, that's just one person. No, that's one person who contacted me. That's one person who got their dad to contact me, or their dad picked up on them or whatever, and then contacted me on their behalf. I bet for any women who are watching this or whatever, there are hundreds and hundreds of people out there that you inspire every day. 100%. But they don't say anything. I got loads of women who are in my Twitch chat, and they love me talking about these things. And I think I really inspire them, and that makes me so happy. And I want to be that person who inspires others. I don't want to be that content creator who's just there for shits and giggles and for people to sexualize and flirt with in the chat. I want to be somebody who's seen as a person. I want to be valued in the Rocket League community for who I am, a pro player or not. I want people to put my skill and my passion for gaming first before my gender. And that was absolutely showed to me when, this guy sent me, the dad sent me a picture, and they bought merch of our team. And, it's not very sentimental for me because it's upper 90s logos, whatever. But he sent me a picture of his daughter wearing our merch. And at that point, it was like, holy shit, this is real. I've had a real honest effect on that person. And that person could grow up and be the next Karma. That person could grow up and be the next KDOP. That person could grow up and be the next Astral. And that's amazing to me, I think.
Yeah. It's amazing to us too. That's why we made sure to ask you that to tell that story. Johnny was telling me that earlier. I was like, oh yeah, we got to get her to tell that one. That sounds pretty. That sounds pretty worth hearing for a lot of people. So we're gonna get into what we call the Widechamp Round in just a second, where we're gonna ask you some more lighthearted questions. But before we do that, I think all the questions we've asked you so far, you've been like, yeah, easy. I have a well-prepared, rehearsed answer for that. No problem. But I have one for you that I'm not sure you were expecting. So we'll see. But why is it? I mean, it seems pretty clear to myself and Johnny, and I think a lot of other people here. But why is it that you think that you're resonating so much with people? Because it seems like you're on a big upswing right now, and there's so many people in my chat right now that are absolutely in love with you. And this doesn't. We've interviewed a lot of people. This is like episode 28. This doesn't really happen So I'm curious to hear from your perspective. I don't know if you've ever looked at it analytically or if you have any thoughts on it, but why do you think you resonate so much with people?
I don't know. I'm honest, maybe. I'm honest without people recognizing it. I think that lots of people in general life just have superficialities and insecurities of their own, and I like to own those insecurities and make them a part of me. And I think people resonate with that strongly. Um, I'm honest to a fault. I'm transparent to a fault, and I think there are lots of people out there in the world who are struggling with their own insecurities and their own superficialities and can't face them themselves. And I think that my brazen transparency and openness and honesty brings out something in those people who are concerned about themselves. And I think, in a way, maybe it's inspiring.
Definitely is. It definitely is. Just
For sure.
for anyone watching or listening right now who didn't pick up on it, but yes, myself and Smellsworth can tell. We can think of many reasons why we think Ravena is resonating with people. Ravena, you're awesome, and you have. Well, before going live today, we were so excited to have you on the podcast, just so we could first of all learn from somebody who knows way more about these topics than we do. And secondly, just to get a chance to hear you making content again. I think your content's great, and it's obvious to me why you're resonating with so many people. But I know as a fellow content creator and fellow streamer, it is sometimes hard to even own your own success, for lack of a better way of putting it, because you don't want to get or you want to stay humble and you want to stay grounded and focus on improving. But yeah, I think you've got a lot of things that you should be patting yourself in the back for.
Definitely.
You've done a whole lot of good already, and I'm sure that's going to continue.
Yeah, I think the only disappointing thing about this podcast so far is the lack of goats in chat. There's just very few goats in chat right
really
now.
not enough goats. Nowhere near enough goats.
If we could get the goat count up, please.
Please.
I mean, Terry's in the house. Terry, if Nightbot says anything, just fucking slap Nightbot, okay? We need more goats quickly.
Yeah.
Quickly. All right. So the goats are out in full force. It is now time to start the Widechamp round. And SSL is sometimes called Widechamp. We thought it was funny, so we took it and named the round after it. But I'm just going to ask you some questions, sort of like, easy rapid fire questions to get your opinion on, and then we're going to play team demo ranked as well. So first off, let's start with your favorites. What's your favorite car that you don't main?
Okay, so I'll take the Octane and Fennec as cars that I main. The favorite car I don't main. I don't know. Maybe it's a tie-up between the Scarab, the Roadhog, and the Remix. But I think I'm moving more towards the Roadhog and the Scarab.
Okay.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and maybe the Scarab that holds something in my heart because it's so zany and bizarre of a car that I think it really has an effect on people.
Yeah.
When you see somebody against you in a Scarab, like, people play against you differently. When they see you have a Scarab, they give you space. They respect you.
Now they're like,
"Respect me,
yeah,
bitch.
just
I got
give
a
the Scarab
Scarab," you
space.
know?
It's fine. It's only a Scarab. It's not going to do
Yeah.
anything. Give him all the space.
And when you see, like, an Octane or a Fennec or something, people just see you as another person. When they see you rocking up in the Scarab, they fear you. They're scared of you, you know?
Wow, there's the voice acting. They fear you.
I got chills.
Oh man, it reminds me of actually early days, how you always felt about the gizmo. Do you know what I mean? When you saw somebody in twos playing the gizmo, you're like, oh fuck, this is a ones main. We're done.
He's gonna dribble. He's gonna carry the ball, and there's nothing you can do.
Dribble and ball us nonstop in this gizmo. Another note on hitboxes: were you excited when the Merc was reunited with a new hitbox? Was that like exciting for you? Was that like sentimental?
In a way, I think that Rocket League was really special when it had non-standardized hitboxes. I thought it added something really interesting. Because there's two angles to this. Rocket League is kind of unique as an esport. It's almost like a perfectly balanced game, in a way, because You can look at kind of League of Legends, and they have maybe slightly different lanes or something. Or you can look at like Overwatch and stuff like that. And these things are play tested and balance tested to high hell. And you think, okay, they're probably very balanced. But what if? What if there is something in there that gives the advantage? A good example is like Dead by Daylight. What if the survivors actually have a greater advantage than the killer in the game? You just don't know. These things can't really be they can't really be quantified. Maybe statistics can show it, but those statistics won't be consistent as players change. But in Rocket League, it's perfectly balanced, as all things should be. Um, and every single player has the same opportunity and access to opportunities in that game. And so a part of me kind of wishes that every single car was the exact same to drive that balance forward. But that's obvious that Sonics weren't going in that direction when they developed the game. So I thought, okay, if every car is different, I think that's something really interesting. Because the only thing that can swing the balance of the game is totally in the hands of the players, right? It's 100%.
It would make those videos less clickbait as well when a new car comes out and all the YouTubers make a video saying it's the OP.
This car's OP. Never had this hitbox before. Whoa!
It's another Octane. Whoa! Every time. But yeah, people still watch those, so I guess it doesn't matter.
And I just think it's really interesting, like the kind of thing, like how can you balance like the hitbox of a car? When I see somebody driving up in a Scarab, I know it's an Octane hitbox, but it looks so different. It looks like an Oreo, right? Like how is the ball going to come off this car? I don't know. And I kind of wish that you didn't have that weird abstraction where you had like vehicles that don't really match the shape of their car, and instead had cars that you could try to dynamically react to in the game based off how they look. But now it's just kind of like it's turned into this thing of like basic expectations, like, oh, it'll kind of go here. And one of the cars that I hate playing against most, but I find it most interesting to go against is the Batmobile because it's so unique in the way that it plays. It's really weird. And it really does rock your world. When you're queuing ones and you go up against somebody in the Batmobile, it's scary. Like you give them a lot more space, you play differently around them.
Very
And it makes
Scarab-like.
for a much more interesting game. I'll
Yeah,
take
for sure.
playing against somebody in a Batmobile for an interesting match any day over somebody in a boring Octane.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Meanwhile, then you're just exacerbating the problem by playing a boring Octane every game. So are you the problem?
I like the
popularizing
Octane for my own reasons. But yeah, like I do wish that the hitboxes weren't standardized anymore. I thought it added something really interesting to the game. And even to go so far as like different cars have different engine sounds. So you could tell like that a certain player had a certain car, or you could learn the engine sounds. And
yeah.
you could know, oh, that the person behind me is coming up without looking at them is a Batmobile, and so I know what to expect. And I think Rocket League has kind of towed this dangerous line between catering to their competitive audience and their casual audience. And at this point, I think it's like a giant mess. I really wish they kind of just went one way. But yeah, anyway, that was super tangential. Scarab.
It's my fault. It's my fault. I asked you about hitboxes.
Yeah.
I knew it would lead to something.
Knew what we're getting into.
Yeah. Favorite decal.
Oh gosh. I'm torn between either. It's got to be either Mainframe, Slipstream, or Heatwave, I think. I really like having a kind of dark car, and not because everybody else uses a dark car. I just find that it helps me to focus on the ball rather than my car a lot more. I think that it can be kind of distracting. And Mainframe and Heatwave, they're very dark, but they kind of like accentuate the corners based on the kind of the flames or textures or shaders that come off it in a way that my car is not distracting, but I can at a glance tell, oh, this is the corner of my car, this is the front of my car, based on the colors. But then Slipstream kind of resonates with me because I had a friend and she kind of disappeared from the Rocket League scene, and she always had this one preset. And he was Mystic, and yeah, and she always had this preset. It was like a star, a slipstream, and then purple zombas. And I still have that preset, and I've never changed it. And I still use that preset sometimes, just as an homage to her, I suppose. And slipstream, whenever I kind of notice slipstream, whenever I see it, it reminds me of her and lots of good times.
Yeah, the good times, the old friends. That's good. Favorite boost?
Oh, this is gonna be super boring.
Besides Alpha.
Boost.
Besides Alpha. Sorry, I always say that. Sorry, I forgot to say that. Besides Alpha.
Can I quickly explain why I like Alpha Boost?
Sure. Yeah.
So Alpha Boost is unique in the fact that as you're going faster, the pitch of the boost changes. I don't think many people have realized that. I made a video on it.
Wait, what?
If you spam boost,
yeah,
the pitch of the boost goes up, and so you can tell how fast you're going based on oral cues instead of visual. And it's very soft, so it doesn't.
Definitely.
So it doesn't like pollute the soundscape, which I really like. But I do really like Alpha Boost for that reason. Even though it kind of it's a bit messy sometimes. It can block the screen. Besides Alpha Boost, I don't know, honestly. There are so many weird boosts out there, like the pickles boost. It's like, what are you doing in your life? Like, why are you using the pickles boost?
I use it to trigger. So I use the pickle boost consistently to trigger.
So I really don't know, honestly.
Okay. What about wheels? Favorite wheels?
Black Veloces, I suppose, which is probably boring.
Hell yeah.
No,
feels fast.
It's tight. It's good. That's the way to be. That's the way to be right there. Okay, we're going to play a game called Team Demo Ranked. I'm not sure if you've seen the pod before, and you don't have to answer that. I'm going to assume you've watched all the episodes. You don't have to embarrass me or Johnny in front of chat and say no. But I'll just re-explain the rules just for funsies, okay? So we're going to name a team name. And you will basically select one player that you would team with, give a justification, one player that you would demo to get rid of, and then one player that you'd play ranked with. And ranked being like, oh yeah, this is just for funsies. Team is a bigger commitment, and then demo because you want to get rid of them, or it can be because you've already chosen your team and your ranked player, and then you demo somebody because they're the last left over. That's kind of how it works. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Excellent. Johnny, you can kick us off here.
Okay, so starting off with, let's just start off with the best team in the world, obviously, Team BDS.
So that's Monkey Moon?
Monkey Moon, marked by A,
yes,
extra.
This is going to be like Calm episode where he doesn't know the rosters.
Gosh, I would probably team with Extra. I don't know anybody from this, but Extra seems like a really nice guy. He was very comfy when I was in Twitch Rivals. That was terrifying, but when he came into my stream, he seems like a really genuine, kind guy.
Yep, friend of the pod. He's been on the show.
Yeah, and I think I value that in a team. Just having somebody who is that kind of not the yes man, just very supportive and stuff. As for like casuals or whatever, I probably pick Monkey Moon. Every time I play him once, he's terrifying. He's like a machine, and I think it'd be quite funny to play casuals and just see him destroy everybody and just get carried. I don't know any of these people.
And then Mark is getting demoed.
Yeah, because I don't know him. I know nothing about Mark.
Let it be known, Ravena really wanted to demo Mark.
Just do you have any message to go with all that hate for Mark, or no? Just
nothing personal. I'm sorry.
We're just kidding. We're just kidding. All good. All right. What about Team Vitality?
Oh, so I would team with Fairy. I've actually 1v1 Fairy quite a few times, and he's really interesting to play. That was when he was a Batmobile main. I don't know if he uses a Fennec now or anything. But On one of the occasions, like, my controller DC'd and he got, like, 2 kickoff goals on me, and I typed in chat like, "Oh, my controller DC'd, I hate it," and he was very humble, and he was like, "Score, it's fine." And he was like, I don't wanna beat somebody because of, like, a problem that's out of my hands." And that really stuck with me, and it was kind of inspiring. I was like, "You're a really cool guy, that's really nice." And he's very inspiring, so I remember seeing him on console. I'd see that, he was on console for a long time, and then I remember just seeing him on the leaderboards go to Signet when he finally went to PC, and then he just shot at the leaderboards, and I was like, "Oh my god, like, that's a console player who's just destroyed everyone." Very peak, like, that's awesome. So I really think Fairy's really cool. So 100% Fairy peak for
In
team.
fact, a little bit of a interesting fact for you guys. I had a chance to tune into Ravena's POV of the Twitch Rivals draft pick, and she was really hoping Fairy Peak would pick her, so she wouldn't have to be on my team. But
Wait, what?
unfortunately, it didn't
You
happen.
watched
So, yeah, yeah. I got so many people send me clips from your stream
I was so
reactions to various things.
sad. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I had a really good time watching this. It was very funny. I believe the exact quote was, "Please, Fairy Senpai, please pick me," or something to that effect. But he didn't, unfortunately. He wanted the French team.
It's a blackout for me, I don't remember. Also, no, it didn't happen. Then I wrote big casuals with probably K-Dot. He can be quite funny sometimes, even though he just speaks French all the time. I don't know what he's saying. He seems like he's quite funny. And then
K-Dot's
I wrote
very,
Demo
very
also.
funny. I can confirm he's hilarious.
He seems like when he's streaming, he has a very good time. I wrote Demo Alpha because I don't really know anything about him. Very alpha.
Wow, we're alpha marked by 8, just in the trash can, just instantly. Nothing to be set. They're just in there. All right, wait. Let's find out who's going to be joining Alpha and Mark in the bin. Let's finish off with NRG, the third best team in the world.
Troll.
This is hard. As generic as it is, I would probably Team Squishy. Not
I don't think that's generic at all, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty rare on this team.
Oh, yeah, not
pretty rare for past guests in fact. Yeah.
Not because it's it's squishy or anything. I think he can actually be quite a smart player. And it wouldn't be Garrett for reasons I first I won't disclose. Maybe I should, I don't know. But not Garrett. Garrett would be in the bin. I'm sorry, Garrett.
Whoa,
bin boy. That's rare.
That's against the grain for sure.
That's
Everybody,
really rare. Yeah.
Everybody says team with Garrett. I think Garrett might be the most picked for team out of Team Demo Ranked history. So that is really like the further. Yeah, you've gone completely against that.
Binny boy.
In the bin.
Yeah, I'll just be honest about it. So I was looking through the WCBC clips before, and I saw some people, and some of those people might be part of this, you know, whatever. And they were clipping things, basically what seemed like making fun of the tournament. And I was like, that seems insensitive.
Ooh.
And
it is.
When you're like an idol and you're like an esports player and at the top of everything, I think it's irresponsible to kind of create that image. And maybe they didn't know that they would be visible, but you know, Koff, someone, and some other people, I had a feeling like they were kind of in a voice chat, clipping things, laughing at things together. And that kind of hurt my feelings a bit, because I feel like it's important to shine light on the good things of something like this rather than make fun of the bad. And it wasn't like kind of just, it seemed a bit more malicious, kind of, than something that was just fun. So that person would be in the bin. I'm sorry.
Get binned.
Wow.
And I think you're right. That deserves binning. If you're a figurehead in the community, you got to carry the flag. You know, it's not. Yeah. So sounds deserved.
And then casual would be Justin, because I think he has a very he has a very unique mechanical style of playing. He kind of mixes in lots of fakes, and I think sometimes it's that he doesn't really think about what he's doing. It's like this kind of spontaneous intuition that carries him, which is really unique. I remember there was the one goal in RTS where he you might remember the goal, but he jumped off the wall, aerial down. He got under the ball, popped it up, flipped it over someone, carried it, and then flicked it into the goal. It was like a big Justin goal when he was first kind of coming into his dominance of the scene. And that was really special, I think. It was something that I could it was something that I could kind of see myself doing in that situation, because it was like taking control. But then Justin is also this person that is just super mechanical and destroys everything too. So it's really interesting. He's like a massive wild card. So I think playing with him in casual would be really fun.
Have you ever thought about doing like replay reviews as content? Just like on your stream and then having them uploaded to YouTube later? Because you have a very analytical mind for the game. It would be extremely interesting to hear you just like even take like what Johnny does. He takes like pro replays and just like talks over them. And I think your perspective is quite unique. It would be really interesting.
100%. Yeah.
The Rocket League community is very juvenile, I think. And I'm just not sure I have the humor to make these kinds of things interesting enough. I don't know.
Oh, well, I mean,
I think you definitely do.
You would be making it for the boomers. That's true. Boomers like us.
Yeah.
You'd probably be making a bit more for the esports crowd, but there's still a really big crowd that's into that kind of stuff. I mean, Johnny's Rocket League empire is largely based on those types of people, I feel, at least. I don't know, Johnny, I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I don't think I have the Fortnite Zoomers, as evidenced by my YouTube channel not blowing up when Rocket League went free to play, and all the Fortnite Zoomer channels blowing up. So yeah, I think there's definitely an audience there for that. You would 100% that would be killer content for you though, Ravena, for sure.
Yeah, well, also
you got a very unique take on this.
Yeah, and also everybody's already into your content right now, so it's like it's just another thing for you to try. I mean, you could try it and see if it works. If it doesn't, who cares, I guess. But I think it'd be really interesting. I'd watch it.
Maybe call it an idea in the cauldron for now. Then
yeah, the old idea cauldron. Throw that in there. Stew it up. What's a hot take that you have that most of the Rocket League community would disagree with? Besides Garrett in the bin.
Gosh. Hot take. I'm struggling so much. I don't know.
What about men shouldn't be assholes to women? Is that
that is kind of hot take?
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, it's too hot.
What was it? The exact question was that most of the Rocket League community would disagree with. So in fact, it might qualify.
Unfortunately, yeah, big time. Unfortunately,
yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, anyway, you had some good hot takes throughout, so it's not really we're not really pressed for that one. That question's more in there for the boring interviews where we didn't get anything out of the interview. It's like, well, please save us with this question.
Yeah,
we got a lot out of this
one.
One
of those interviews. Yeah,
we got a lot out of this one. So, one thing we would like to do, although most of the chat is a big fan of yours, like where should people find you? Is Twitch the best way to follow along? Is it Twitter?
Probably. I want to get into YouTube so I can kind of have a secondary, more consistent form of income. Just because if I ever need to go away somewhere, I can't schedule streams, but I can schedule videos.
Yeah.
And I think there's kind of a nice. I like having structured content presented in a way that it is concise and well thought out. Whereas I think streaming is a bit more like a spontaneous melting pot for ideas. I do want to get into YouTube. I just kind of think that I'm a mess at the moment with everything. But so definitely keep an eye on my YouTube. It's not gonna be stale forever, I promise. Once I get myself, organized and everything. But mainly Twitch, yeah, and then only Twitter. But it's kind of boring.
Okay.
Yeah, the Twitch is where it's at. But yeah, you're just like waiting until you can think of the YouTube content. Is that the plan when you've got the YouTube content figured out? That's when
I
you'll.
have video ideas in my head.
You should just do the what do you call it? You do the no gravity rings, right?
Yeah, I could do
Yeah,
a
so
video on that.
upload that with. I don't think is there any no gravity rings videos on YouTube. Nobody's allowed to steal this idea. I know there's probably like some of these like YouTubers watching who have ran out of ideas and they're thinking, genius. They're already like booting up Rocket League and downloading the maps. They can steal this. I'm not allowing that. You can't steal this. So we'll leave it. Ravena, you've done this. You should do that. Just like put some
Oh,
like copyright free chill music, gravity free. No gravity, gravity free. No gravity rings on YouTube. That could easily like blow up for sure.
that could be
There you go.
my hot take, actually. I hate Rule 1.
Nice. Here we go.
Okay.
Yeah, and people get angry at me all the time because I don't stay in them.
Oh,
I
so
think
you flip out of them all the time.
yeah, I think it's boring. Like, I think people like queue into threes, right? Like, I'm ready for threes and pump for threes. I'm just getting like forced into a 2v2 or a 1v1 or whatever. I think it really rubs me the wrong way. Like, I hate being on the receiving end of a Rule 1.
Oh, when your
And
teammate's
like,
doing it, you mean?
yeah,
You
like
say
it's
to
really
okay.
annoying because I didn't like sign up for that. And I just think I think the game is just like is so interesting in and of itself that Rule 1 just takes away a lot of that interest for me.
Do you think you can bait less intelligent players into strategical rule 1? So like you could rule 1 them on your goal line, because then you're technically still in position to make saves if you need to at the very last second
Strats.
pull out. So you could you can use it to your advantage perhaps.
Yeah, that's very industrious. Maybe I need to get that into my my Rocket League repertoire.
Make it public knowledge that you hate this and you hate when people do this to you. Then people are going to try and do it to you, and you can like bait them into positions where it favors your team. There you go.
Yeah, I'll name it after
Outsmarted.
myself and like post it on Reddit. Like, is this a new mechanic? People send me into a Rule 1.
Yeah, it's a winner. It's a winning formula. You're playing in the when is the RL goals for change? I saw this posted on Reddit. This tournament that's coming up.
It's on the 24th, I think. So if
So 1
anybody's
week from today is when it is.
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So if anybody's unaware, the Rocket League Goals for Change is an event to celebrate National Women's Day where women in the Rocket League community will be playing against each other for charity. Every single team involved gets charity donations. So even if I come dead last, we can still donate to charity. And just as an FYI for anybody who wasn't aware, basically worked on the basis that there were 4 EU captains and 4 NA captains, and each captain got to pick their own teammate. So some people weren't involved, but that's not necessarily because they weren't picked by Sonics or something.
Okay.
Okay.
And so yeah, like if you want to see me play there, go ahead. I'm also doing a charity event this Saturday for the WCBC.
Are you streaming both of those things in your channel?
Yes, I should be. And the charity event on Saturday is because I didn't really heard like in the news there was a competitive gamer and she was, I think, murdered. Her name was Sol. I think it was tweeted out by a slasher or something. But basically, we're doing charity to raise money for her family to cover the costs of her funeral and stuff like that, because she was basically victim of a hate crime, which was strongly to do with her being a woman in a gaming environment. So yeah, we're doing a charity event on Saturday.
No, I didn't hear about
in
this.
honor of
I'll
that.
have to read up about that one. So and you're streaming how many? You're streaming most days, I take it as well.
6 days a week, and I do some variety here and there when it's convenient.
The grinder.
I've just moved into my own place.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Oh,
Mr.
nice.
Told me,
New digs. Awesome.
yeah, I heard that you're playing like what is it, Witcher 3 and as your second game right now.
No, you're not serious.
Yeah, that's what my chat told me.
That. This is my favorite game. It's not. It's a meme.
It isn't?
I don't know.
Do you
Well,
have
as in
any,
you've been playing it, but you just don't like it.
laughing.
But you're still like pushing yourself through it, even though you don't like the game, or
No.
do you have any?
I do not.
Do you have
Basically,
any
I think it's a really overrated game, and I've spoken about it many times.
okay.
I think it's a good. I think, like, because I talk about games a lot and people are like, oh, The Witcher 3, I love The Witcher 3. And then everybody just made a meme and they're like, I love The Witcher 3. And, I'm in love with everything to do with it. And
Oh,
it's
so the
just,
Geralt tattoos, that's a meme as well.
yeah, I don't have a tattoo of Geralt of Rivia.
You do know his full name though, which is more than I knew. I didn't know that.
Sure.
I've seen the series. Is it on Netflix or something? I think I
Oh
watched it.
God,
I
I've
can't
looked at
remember
that.
where.
It's terrible.
It was okay. I thought it was all right.
It was pretty bad. It was pretty fucking awful.
I expected worse. Let's just say I thought it was gonna be worse. I was like, it's decent.
So bad. I thought it was just the worst thing I'd ever seen. Honestly, I couldn't believe how bad it was. Yeah,
I didn't think it was the worst thing I've ever seen. I've seen some pretty bad TV shows recently because my girlfriend's got terrible taste in what to
that
watch.
does happen.
So my standards I've had to reevaluate like what bad is. Like I reserve bad for what is truly bad. Yeah, it's not the best though. For sure.
Do you have any future plans for Witcher 3 tattoos, or is it just a no-go?
We'll throw that one in the idea cauldron.
The idea cauldron, yeah.
I feel like you're saying that, but what you mean is that you're absolutely not gonna do it. I started to pick up on this. The idea cauldron might actually be the bin where Garrett marked by 8 at Alpha currently reside. So I don't know if I think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, so that question was sponsored by I'm Kieran in chat. A hot 10 gifted to ask about your Witcher 3 tattoo. I started asking about it about 15 minutes ago. We just kept that one in the back pocket for a long time. So there we go. This brought to you by I'm Kieran. Anyway, Ravena, has been awesome. I mean, if you watch any of the intros for the Saltcast, I'm always like, this is our best episode. I most of the time don't mean it. This might very well be the best episode. It was super interesting. You're really well spoken, and it sounds like you get a lot of time to talk about this kind of stuff during your streams. But maybe you should think about doing some sort of long form talky talk.
I was going to say this as well. I was going to say this. You would be really good at this, actually.
Yeah, if you were interviewing people, I think that you'd do quite well.
Yeah, I think so. Or just like, if anybody out there with a Rocket League podcast is looking for the dream guest, just get Ravena on here, because you could ask her like the dumbest question of all time, and she'll somehow make like a huge thought out and very well structured answer. By the time that you've explained your answer in all its detail, people have forgotten how dumb the question was. So it's really quite good for us.
Or she'll just throw it in the idea cauldron. So
yeah, or that. Win-win. Yeah, the Ravena podcast win. That would be good content for sure.
No, thank you so much. You've both been really great. I'm always available. So if I am ever needed,
you are. You are needed. You are needed. You're very much needed. You have a very important place in this community. It's very clear based on what's happening in my chat right now that is the case. I've never had this much Witcher spam ever. I don't even think the fucking game's been mentioned before, to be totally honest with you. No. I don't think I've ever, I've certainly never played it or talked about it or thought about it really. Congratulations on all the recent success. Hope it continues for it. We're very, very happy to have you on the pod, and hope you have a good night.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I just hope that everybody in the chat, and I hope I just hope you guys learned something today.
That's a lot.
All I want to come.
Everybody type 1 if you learned something. We can solve this one with a visual poll. I think it's going to be unanimous. There you go.
I saw somebody in the chat recently, and they were like, "Oh, I've never heard it put that way before," and that was really like insightful, or like, "Oh, I understand it now because it's put that way," and that really warms my heart, because knowing I've come away from this and having made a difference is really important to me, honestly.
Yeah, good job. Congrats on all the recent success. Long may it continue.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Should I see myself out?
Yeah, sure.
I'm gonna go BRB anyway as well. So
thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna run out because this will be like the end of the YouTube.
All right,
segment.
it's been a pleasure, and bye.
Thanks,
everyone.
Ravena. See ya.
Have a nice night.
That's going to be it for the Ravena episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it, and I hope also there were some takeaways there for you about how we can all be a bit better to each other in the community. Now, I've gone ahead and created a playlist of other Rocket League content creators. Go ahead, click on that, and you'll have some more interesting Saltcast episodes to consume. Thanks.